Hello and welcome back to Jack Knives Reviews. I'm of course your host, Jack Knives. Today we'll be looking at a somewhat different musical biopic. Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. In 1982, Bruce Springteen fights with his personal struggles, depression, and relationships, despite his fame, channeling it all into an album he's been working on, called Nebraska. The movie was written and directed by Scott Cooper, who made movies like Antlers, which I may watch. I actually never got around to seeing it. And Black Mass, which I did see and I did actually enjoy. This was a little bit of a departure from his style, I guess. In some ways, and in some ways not. It's based off of the biography by Warren Zanes called Deliver Me From Nowhere, which Bruce Springsteen approved of, talking on his issues right before he made it huge. He had just made Born to Run, which was his first real huge hit, and he hadn't quite gotten to stardom fame yet, but he was like right at the beginning of it. But he decided to self-reflect and deal with his own traumas, which this movie, it's all about that. It's more about his self-reflection. That's part of the issue. But I'll get to that in a minute. Jeremy Allen White as Bruce Springsteen is actually a really good choice and call for this kind of a character because he plays vulnerability better than almost anyone. The problem is we're only given a cursory glance and snippets of his past, so we don't really get the full context of everything that he's went through as a kid. You know, a neglectful parent, somewhat abusive, alcoholic, you know, the usual. I kind of wanted to see more of how that affected him later in life rather than just showing clips of his childhood. I feel like it should have built more towards them having a reconciliation, which there's somewhat of one, but not really. Odessa Young plays Faye Romano, who is future wife. She does a really good job as this kind of everyday girl who was obviously a big fan of Bruce, but she had this kind of stoic no nonsense about her that really made her likable. And she seemed like a competent person that truly did love her daughter. And we see Bruce as a young kid interacting with her daughter, and it was really heartfelt. It was really sweet and genuine, and it felt like, yeah, I could see Bruce being like that. The parts where the movie really thrives at is showing the construction of the album, the concepts of what he's trying to make, which would eventually become the album Nebraska, which is a little more of a folky album compared to most of Bruce's work. But it is a great and amazing album, but I could see why. I mean, even now it's somewhat experimental and kind of divides with the fans. Not really in a huge way, but it's just kind of like, oh, okay, compared to his other stuff. It barely dabbles in him making Born in the USA, the album that essentially made him what it was, being an accident. And like that should have been a little bit of a bigger deal in the movie, but it really is just like cursory glanced. I think that's the biggest issue I had with this movie. It felt less like a biopic and more like a VH1 behind-the-scenes daytime drama biopic. And I think that's kind of irritated me. It's a movie about one of the most famous musicians, and yet it focuses very little on the actual construction of the songs and the music. Granted, there are parts that he brings up, like how he based some of the stuff off of a true crime story, which is interesting, which they could have done a little more with, but I don't know. It felt underwhelming, I guess, is the biggest issue I had with it. There are also some amazing performances like Jeremy Strong, Paul Walter Hauser, and Stephen Graham as both the young and old version of Bruce's dad were probably the biggest highlights of the movie. Their performances were really just so good. And Jeremy Allen White did an amazing job with this movie for what he was given. And the problem is as I said before, he is a great, amazing dramatic actor who can squeeze emotion and sadness with just his look. But the problem is you need to give him material to work with. And this is an example of the material being so paper thin. I don't know why. You had an entire book to work with. You could have added stuff. You could have talked to Bruce Springteen and give him some context of, okay, well, tell us about your dad. Like, what specifically issues did you have with him? Like, was there a conversation? Was there a comment he made? Was it something that drove you to have this conflict with him? It's barely at all glanced, and it just irritated me, because I'm like, I wanted you to give me the story, but it felt like I was getting snippets and Cliff Note versions. And unfortunately, it's kind of why it falls somewhat flat as a biopic. Especially considering I saw earlier the Bob Dylan biopic this year, and it was way, way better. I think it truly just felt underwhelming. And sadly, that does make it not really worth that much at seeing it. I give Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere 2.5 out of 5. Have you seen Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to stab that subscribe button and slice that like button, and I'll see you next time.